Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we're on with Kady Srinivasan. And Kady, you are the CMO of Lightspeed. And at the same time, you've had a lot of great background and different perspectives in the go-to-market. In fact, you've seen almost every different kind of go-to-market strategy, whether it's PLG, whether it's self-service, whether it's enterprise. You've worked with scale-ups. You've worked with companies that have $1 billion in revenue. In fact, you've seen it from so many different perspectives. I think you're going to have a unique perspective on what we're going to talk about here today, which is the mental state of today's CMO. There can probably be, with all the pressures of the C-suite and then in marketing, there could probably be a whole different category of therapists just focused for us as CMOs. But before we get into that, I'd love to just give you a chance to maybe expand a little bit more on your background so we can get to know you a little bit more before we dig in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve, for that kind introduction. I think like you summarized, I've been a little bit lucky in that I've had a lot of different kind of experiences across, not just B2C, B2B, but also B2C. And specifically in B2B, I've focused a lot on PLG and enterprise-led motions, and inbound high-velocity sales-led motions, as well as thinking about things like how do you grow from $50 to $100 million versus 150 to 600 on the scale-up side. But then on the other side of the equation, for a company like Lightspeed, which is a public company, how do you manage $1 billion public company at scale and be profitable? So there's been a lot of different kind of learnings. And I think it's interesting, even in the last 15 years that I've been sort of in the CMO seat, things have changed so dramatically for us from a sales and marketing perspective, not just from an expectation perspective on what we are required to deliver, but also the kinds of things that we have to keep up with as we do our daily job. So it's a very interesting time, a very unique time for all of us, and certainly, something that affects a lot of us from both a psychological as well as a performance perspective.
And I think that psychological and performance perspective, I was reading a New York Times article about a year ago, and they were saying before the turn of the century, not into the 21st century, but like into the 1900s, is that the amount of information that we needed to have in our head could fit into one edition of the New York Times today. Now you fast forward, you think about like everything that we need to do and understand, right? And all the data that's coming in that we need to analyze, the amount of the teams, just the amount as humans in our lives, let alone now as C-suite individuals, what we have to do and stay on top of is really mind-boggling, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask, though, with that as a preface, to you, what is the mental state of today's CMO? Like, what affects it? What is it? And then we'll get into what we can start doing.
Yeah. No, I think it's such a good topic for all of us to talk about, because I do think we don't give it enough attention. So I'm really happy that someone like yourself is focusing on it. I think before I talk about what's actually happening, let's talk about the result of what all CMOs are going through. The result of this is a 15-month lifespan for most CMOs. That's the average tenure, 15 to 18 months. And so when you kind of unpack that a little bit and you think about it, it's because the job is actually basically 3 jobs in one. You have to be a sales support engine. So you have to know your numbers really well. You have to know your pipelines really well. You have to be able to talk to salespeople. You have to be able to provide them with the right kind of enablement and sales material and all that kind of stuff. And in some cases, you also have to be able to sell and close, right? That's one big part of the job. The second part of the job is you have to be you have to know the product, sometimes even better than a lot of the people in the product organization. You have to know how to talk about the product. You have to construct the story. You have to tell a story. You have to take the product and convert that into benefits. You have to know the customer super well. And that's a big, big aspect of the job.
Right.
And then the third aspect of the job is the especially if you're in a public company, you're having to figure out, how do I create a narrative and about the company, about the story? How am I spreading the word? And basically being a communications professional in many
Yes.
ways. But you're spreading the word, you're evangelizing what the company is about, including the brand and the mission and the vision and all that stuff. So you kind of think about it, like three different roles with shades of different other roles blended into one. So no wonder a lot of us are stretched in multiple directions on a day-to-day basis. I'm spending, half my day on a sales pipeline issue, the other half of the day on a product piece, and then the third half of the day, which doesn't exist, on some kind of comms perspective. And so we are overworked, we are stressed, and it sometimes feels like you're letting everybody down because your expectations are not clear. So I think it's a really, really good thing for us to bring this to light and shine light on it and say, well, there is something here that we need to fix.
You know, I'm going to add on top of that too, as a part of the C-suite, you also have a job which is an executive responsible for the long-term profitable development of the company, right?
Okay.
Which means you're in there, you're having conversations you didn't have before with operations and logistics and, finance. And
Yeah.
so that's a whole nother level. What other
1000%.
department is
Yeah.
really a glue between all the departments,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Marketing plays that role.
Yeah. Yeah.
10 years ago, did you have to be a data expert? No.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden we have to be our own chief data officers, right? Because
Mhm.
that's not happening. The most companies don't have a CDO, right? So, I mean, I think you painted the perspective really well. There's a lot more expectations on us, on top of the fact that we are one of the largest cost centers in the
Mhm.
company as well,
Yeah.
right? So, that's a very strong fiscal responsibility that we have. And most C-suite executives, especially the CEOs and CFOs, they're very good at cost reduction, right? We're trying to get leaner and meaner, no matter what, whether you're that billion-dollar company or not. I
Yeah.
just talked to a value accelerator advisor for Goldman Sachs, and
Mhm.
they put $100 million into the startup. And we
Mhm.
started talking about their CMO. And she
Mhm.
said, she's got a small team. She's got way too much to do than she has resources to do it. I'm thinking, you just put $100 million into this company. Are you not resourcing your CMO?
Yeah.
Right? What's the mental state of that CMO right now?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
No,
it,
you're 1000% spot on. I think it's you, as an executive in the company, you do have to take the approach of being the strategy driver, not just a marketing strategist. And
right.
that's a little bit of a kind of an evolution in the role as well. But in thinking through all of that, I will say there is no more exciting time to be a CMO than this right now,
Yeah. Yeah.
because for all of the problems and the challenges that we just talked about, it's also you're literally in the center of everything, and
Right.
you can help drive the some of the product development roadmaps. You can help drive the vision of the company. You can help execute against what the founder or the CEO wants in terms of where they see the company going. So when it's done right, there is a ton of opportunity for CMOs to really up level the organization in a meaningful way.
Yeah. So no, that's the now 100%. And I think all of us, are saying absolutely we can do that. And it addresses one of the mental state issues, which is a lot of CMOs have imposter syndrome, right? They're like, well, I've never done that before. I'm not a chief data officer, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a product expert. It's easy for us to say all of that,
Yeah.
but I have an opinion on that I want to ask your opinion on. Okay.
Okay.
Because
Wonderful.
the entire go-to-market strategy, everything that we've just talked about, has one voice of authority that is the most important, whether it's sales, whether it's product, whether it's marketing, whether it's every aspect of the go-to-market strategy. That voice of authority is our customer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Most companies don't have a chief customer officer. It's not going to be the CRO. It's not going to be the CPO. It's not going to be the CEO. It's not going to be the CFO. Who is taking that mantle? So this is what made me think of it, when you say you have the opportunity to upscale your entire organization,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What in your mind is the role of representing the voice of the customer to
Yeah.
all the different departments all throughout the go-to-market strategy? Is that one of the keys to kind of
Yeah.
solving our mental state and getting our rightful seat at the table in doing that and upscaling the entire company?
Yeah, I love that question. So at Lightspeed, if you could indulge me for a second, one of the things that when I came to the company, one of the things we were doing was we were trying to sell our product to everybody in our town, and our product was not meant for everybody in the town. And I think we had done that because we just wanted to go after growth for growth's sake and all the kind of
Yep.
stuff. Our product was meant for a very specific niche within that TAM where they could find massive value from our product, which served more complex customers. We were set up for more complex customers. So when I came on board, I basically defined the ICP and then pivoted the entire company towards that ICP, including full go-to-market alignment, driving focus from a product perspective, customer support, customer success at scale. The entire machinery, shifted towards the ICP stuff, and that took me 2 years to do because it's not overnight kind of a switch. So when to your point, which is so insightful, I think the CMO job is not just in being the customer maven, but also thinking about how to serve the customers and aligning the rest of the company to serve that particular customer who will see outsized value from your product or your platform, and being very, very clear and deliberate about who that is that we are going after. So I think it's a very important thing to do. The thing that I feel like I encountered is this lack of conviction, right? Like when
Mhm.
when we think about presenting these kind of strategies to the board, the first question would be, but why are you constraining your market? What's the market segment you're going after? Why is it not as big as it should be? And so a lot of things start to get in the way of doing this because of people that believe that more is better, bigger is better.
Right.
And so you have to have a lot of conviction that there is a certain market segment that we are going after, and getting a market share of this to this in that market segment is going to result in this kind of a growth versus going after a whole bunch and getting a small percentage improvement in market share. So that's where the imposter syndrome, I think, hits hard. Is if you haven't done that before, you're filled with doubt. You're filled with, oh my, the right thing? Am I pushing the entire company? I'm putting my career on the line, basically, right? To go after this sort of a big bet, and is that actually going to work out or not?
So wow, you're right, because your voice is actually counter to the board, to the CEO, the CRO that has a quota on his head and every department member of his department. And they're like, okay, you can define your ICP, but if I can bring in a deal that is maybe just to the side of that ICP, I'm going to do it. Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
my livelihood depends on that.
yeah,
But what ends up happening is, a couple of things. A, if you're not set up to handle that
yeah,
side ICP, then you're going to burn through resources
yeah,
internally. Your
yeah,
product development roadmap is not going to
yeah.
fit them. They're going to churn. Your NRR score is going to
That's
suffer.
right.
And every B2B company should be having 30 to 40% of their new annual revenue coming from their existing customers.
Mm,
If you're not bringing in the customers that are not only going to stay with you, but expand with you because
yeah,
they're off to the side,
yeah,
then you are sacrificing the long-term prosperity of your company,
yeah. That's
right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
But you've got to be bold enough to say, this is why, right? And
Yeah.
stand up to a board of directors, right? And say, do
Yeah.
you want 30 to 40% of revenue coming from existing client relationships? That's a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot more efficient. That's a lot more
Yeah.
scalable.
Yeah.
Maybe when we were really small, we needed to chase logos till the cows came home. But as we grow, right,
Yeah.
and we get larger market share, we have
Yeah.
to be looking at our existing customers. It's all about having the
Yeah.
story right, right? But
Correct.
having, to your point, the conviction on it.
Correct.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
And yeah, and I love that you reference that data. I do think you can't just take this on in isolation, right? You have to ground all of this in data. To your
Yeah.
point earlier, if you're for us, I think the case was pretty clear, and fortunately, I had the support of our ex CEO who had a vision that this was the right thing to do for the company, and so that's how we could
Yes.
make it. But if
Right.
you don't have that alignment with the CEO, then it becomes it becomes harder on a much bigger scale.
You know, I want to get your opinion on this because part of the bet that you put, right, that you put your career on for means as a part of that means that you have to have very strong criteria for where you say no,
Hmm.
where you say that is not the right deal for our organization.
Yep.
In fact, I had a gentleman on who is with a private equity company and consults with the entire portfolio, CROs, CMOs, CEOs, and he said we recommend that they actually have sectors of the TAM that do not count towards your quota.
Mm.
Bring the deal in if you want. It's not going to count towards your quota, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, changing that compensation structure changed behavior, right?
Mm.
Because if you want to say this is
Yeah.
our core TAM, this
Yeah.
isn't, then you got to address fundamental things like comp plans in the sales
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
And how do you align that, right, with the
Yeah.
direction of the vision where you're going?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't, here's what I love about this conversation is we have to be able to think through the entire ecosystem of what we're doing, how we're affecting the entire organization, and truly what it's going to take in order to do that.
Yeah. Yes. Correct. That's exactly it. And I think you're 100% right. I think um, when you're a sales-led motion, for sure, I think the commission planning is going to be so important. How you design your compensation metrics for not only the salespeople, but I would argue for some part of the marketing team as well is super important. Plus, let's not underestimate other adjacent organizations like onboarding or customer success or account management. There is a compensation structures that we need to think through for each of those if you want to incentivize the right behavior at the right level. I think it's also so important to think about the planning aspect of it too, right? So, for instance, when you are, let's say you're a PLG company and you're
Yep.
trying to push up market because you realize your product is better suited for bigger enterprise kind of customers. That transition is crazy complex because one,
Yes.
your entire product, first of all, is probably set up to do fast velocity type onboarding, intuitive onboarding. And then when you want to pivot more upmarket, you need to now bring in more professional sales who are not just order takers, but who know how to do complex solution selling.
Mhm.
Plus, bring in onboarders who understand the nuances and are able to get solution architects involved where it's needed for an enterprise customer. So the whole machinery will need to go through a significant sort of an evolution and a reskin when you start to focus the customer on the right pieces. And in the planning process is when it breaks down because you have traditionally planned for a certain amount of velocity of MQLs, SQLs, and closed ones coming through. And when you start to pivot, all of that is going to shrink. You won't have 2,000 MQLs anymore. You'll probably have 50. You won't have 100 closed ones anymore. You will have maybe 20. And your ARPU is going to go from whatever X number to 5X because you're going after enterprise customers. And if you don't take those planning assumptions into picture when you go after this in the new year, then you're kind of screwed because everything sort of reverts back to what you were doing earlier. You're
Well,
bringing small signals because you're hitting your ARPU numbers. You're like you're blowing through your closed ones because
right.
you're bringing small customers. So there's checks and balances that we need to put in place even before all of this starts.
So I think what you've just defined really well is that to have the proper mental perspective and then state as a CMO, you better be really comfortable with chaos management.
Yeah.
Right? You better,
Yeah.
you're never going to be in a position where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, job now done.
Yeah.
Right. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
here's my next question for you. You said
Yeah.
that you went under a 2-year process, a change process,
Yeah.
just on the strategy to pivot to the right ICP, which then obviously then translates to the rest of the go-to-market.
Yeah.
What were your biggest challenges? You had the backing of the CEO. Right?
Yeah.
That's a major challenge. Why did it take 2 years, and what were the big challenges there?
Yeah. I think the first part of it is we started by defining who our ICP is in very clear terms, in terms of not only what their demographics are from a company perspective, but also who are the roles, what are the personas, what are their need states, and what they're
Yeah.
thinking about, that kind of stuff. And that itself was a big difference for a lot of people. And then coming out of that, we started to put together a very clear value proposition and product positioning kind of a statement around this is why our product works for these kinds of customers really well. And it was extremely related to, some of those things that I
Mm,
mentioned, inventory management, complex workflow management, things that smaller customers wouldn't care about, but was critical for bigger customers. And then the first hurdle they hit was basically changing our website to
mm,
update, to get this product positioning and narrative updated on the website. Because when you start doing that is when you start to see the actual results come through. When you pivot your positioning on the website, you are going to take a hit on the hit. Our MQLs, um, uh, we expected that our MQLs would start to drop very slowly over time because we wouldn't be attracting as many of those people and they wouldn't convert
right.
as many. So we took a very deliberate approach to doing that. We did the whole A/B testing, like 10% traffic, then 20%, then 30%, and slowly sort of made our way into migrating to the new look and feel and the website. That was all the marketing, external facing stuff. Then we had this bigger question about how do we now enable our sales teams? How do we make sure that our sales pods were set up so that when a new high value deal comes in and it gets qualified by the frontline sales reps, then it gets routed to the right people with the right knowledge and the right seniority. Because the lead routing is so important. You can't just take
Yeah.
a $3 million customer and have them go through teams. Like a
No.
$300
No.
customer goes through. So that was a big change. Then to your point, there's a whole bunch of things related to compensation and how we looked at not just the sales piece, but onboarding, customer success, the whole downstream effect. I'd say so those were the big sort of challenges. There's a whole bunch of other things, little ones that I'm not talking about yet. They're just getting people on board with the idea. I would say that's part's the change management process. And you
Mhm.
referenced it earlier, but for me, that moment was a couple of years ago when I kicked off our sales summit in front of like 3,000 people in the company. I kicked it off by saying, "This is what we're going to do," and got them excited. And that was like the start of a drumbeat of regular communication that we kept doing about why this was important, why ICP is important, or what we're giving them, what's the value, what are they saying about us, et cetera, et cetera. It's like how company riled up and going in that direction.
So I want to bring this conversation back around to our original topic about how do we
I
dress
just
this
don't
like,
know.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
how do we address the mental state of today's
Yeah.
CMO? Because by the end of this, there's so much we need to do. I think we've almost done more damage to the mental state of the CMO than good. But understanding what it takes to be successful today, I think
Yeah.
is a big part of this.
Yeah.
But if you were to say, what are potential solutions to mental fatigue and what needs to be done in our mental state, what would you suggest? Like, where do we need to go?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say I think the one thing that I found very useful in my life is having a very strong support system. And I'm
Yeah.
not just talking about family and friends outside of work, but even mentors, other fellow CMOs, for me, the people that have worked for me in the past who have now gone on to become CMOs,
Yeah.
incredibly nourishing connections with them, just to be able to help and be part of that kind of a journey. So having that support system is so important. Just being able to use that as a therapy kind of a thing. The second thing is, I'd say a lot of the stress of the job comes from mismatched expectations with not just
Mm.
the CEO or the board, but also the rest of the executive team.
Yeah.
So having a very strong set of conversations, expectation setting with your peer group in the executive team, I think that's so important, because without that, you tend to feel alone and isolated, and you feel like you're not serving anybody well, and that sort of eats into the whole thing. I'd say the third one, in my opinion, that's worked for me is making time to unplug, like really unplug.
Mm. Mm.
When I go on vacation, I don't even check my email. I just turn it off completely. I remove Slack from my phone. I silence all my WhatsApps and texts and all that stuff. And I know several people who stay updated in terms of, I just need to get through my email, otherwise it'll become a mountain kind of a thing. It is me that like never works. I need to completely recharge and relax to get perspective and lift out of it. Those are things I'd say are very important. For me personally, a fourth one is just reading. I do a lot of reading, and that gives me the perspective and the context that I sometimes need to get out of the rabbit holes of stress.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, like anybody that's listening in and that is stressed, call me or hit me up on LinkedIn. It's so important to have somebody who you can talk to and have some shared stories with.
I think you might have just opened the floodgates when you said that.
One
you
more
know,
yeah.
uh, Kady, we've covered so much territory here.
Yeah.
If there was one thing that you
Yeah.
wanted CMOs or CEOs or CROs that are watching right now to understand the mental state of the CMOs they work with, what's the one thing that you'd want us to remember from this podcast?
Yeah. I'd see look, speaking on behalf of a lot of people, I'd say a lot CMOs sign on to a company because they believe in the founder, the vision, the product, they believe in the vision that the product can make a customer's life better. That I've seen that kind of thread across a lot of different people. So there is passion there, and there's loyalty there, and there's a lot of that kind of noble intention, if you will. But when you come in, the setup is so complicated and so changeable all the time. It's like being on shifting sands. You're never
Yeah.
sure direction to go to, or where to flex, or what exactly to do. It's almost like you're playing whack-a-mole when you're on shifting sands. That's the life of a CMO right now. And so if there's one thing that I want to counsel CEOs and CROs to do, is make it very, I'd say make sure your expectation of what you want is very clear. What are the outcomes you're looking to drive? And have they been communicated in the clearest and the crispest way possible, so that there's no confusion about what it is that you're looking to achieve and you're looking to drive, and then let the CMO do their job, because CMOs are pretty damn talented, and
Yeah,
give him a chance to shine.
I love it. Well, you know, I'm gonna I'm gonna give out a link to your LinkedIn profile with this podcast. So get ready. Get ready.
I am happy to help.
And Katie, just thank you for coming on and sharing. These are unspoken things, right, in the industry. A lot of it that really we need to be aware of, and we need to know that we're not alone. That's a big
Yeah,
part of this too, right? And
yeah,
that there is a community that we can reach out to. So thank you for just kind of expanding the conversation around the CMO today. I appreciate it.
absolutely. No, this was a lot of fun. I'm glad you studied the topic.